War.
The phrase evokes visions of grueling battles, years of hardship, and entire generations lost to the fire and mud. For over 100 years, these two great powers clashed across the fields of France, resulting in some of the bloodiest encounters of the medieval age. This was the reality of the 30 Years' War, a conflict fueled by religion and power, leaving a trail of destruction across the land.
The long, bloody 20th century.
But what if two sovereign states were engaged in a real war, and it ended before lunch?
Prior to the harbor being completely burnt away by the morning fog,
the shortest war in recorded history is told here.
no conflict. It's not a border conflict. A war officially proclaimed that started at 9:02 a.m.
and concluded at 9:40 a.m.
"38 minutes total time."
August 27, 1896 was the date.
The aggressors, the world's most potent military power, the British Empire.
And the little island nation of Zanzibar, which is located off the coast of East Africa.
The battleground was not a large rural area. There was only one harbor. One building is the aim.
There is no metaphor here.
It tells the tale of how the most powerful superpower in the planet unleashed its full, terrible strength.
To resolve a political dispute faster than making a pot of tea.
The Anglo-Zanzibar War is this.
You have to understand Zanzibar before you can comprehend the 38-minute war.
It was the jewel of the Indian Ocean in the late 1800s.
An important center for the spice trade.
And, regrettably, for the human traffic. The British Empire had complicated interests here at the height of its dominance. Control over the trade routes was their goal. However, Zanzibar's aristocracy relied on the East African slave trade, which they sought. An agreement was made in 1890.
The British established Zanzibar as a protectorate.
The Sultan could govern his subjects, but only with Britain's consent.
To permanently abolish. They also maintained a robust abolitionist movement at home.
A crucial clause in the treaty stipulated that a new sultan could only take the throne with the British consul's approval.
It was a diplomatically disguised leash. The agreement was successful for a few years.
Hamad bin Thuwaini, the pro-British Sultan, occupied the throne.
However,
He passed away on August 25, 1896.
Abruptly.
According to some historians, he might have been poisoned.
Khalid bin Barghash, his 29-year-old cousin, moved in before the Sultan's body had even cooled.
He disregarded the agreement.
The British were disregarded.
He proclaimed himself the new Sultan of Zanzibar, marched into the palace with a contingent of obedient men, and locked the doors.
Khalid bin Barghash, his 29-year-old cousin, moved in before the Sultan's body had even cooled.
The British Empire was directly and deliberately challenged. Consul Basil Cave was the island's top British official. His authority, and consequently the Crown's authority, was directly attacked.
Khalid had a reputation for being fiercely independent and wary of British influence.
Cave dispatched a telegram to the newly proclaimed Sultan right away.
Stand down.
Sultan Khalid declined. He started to organize his troops.
According to historical records, he had about 2,800 men.
This comprised citizen volunteers, the palace guard, and, most importantly, artillerymen. They positioned the guns on the palace grounds, pointing them toward the harbor, and wheeled out a number of bronze cannons, as well as a Gatling gun. He believed he had a secret weapon as well. Glasgow's HHS. This is the Sultan's lone warship. Queen Victoria herself had given it a royal yacht, which was now equipped with a Gatling gun and a few tiny guns. With its cannons aimed toward the British fleet, it anchored in the harbor.
Basil Cave wasn't playing a bluff.
He gestured to Rear-Admiral Rawson, who is in charge of the Cape and East Africa Station of the Royal Navy.
Rawson had access to 5 contemporary vessels.
Less than a mile from the palace, 3 cruisers, HMS Philomel, Raccoon and Sparrow, steam entered the harbor and took up fire positions. The gunboat, HMS Thrush, and the flagship, HMS St. George, soon joined them.
This battle was unfair.
The pre-industrial era was contrasted with the industrial period.
Steel was used to make the British ships. Wood and coral were used to build the Sultan's palace. Cave gave his parting command.
It was hot and clear on the morning of August 27.
Khalid and his 2,800 troops waited in the palace.
They thought that the British were acting.
They wouldn't demolish their own protectorate's capital over a little succession dispute, would they?
Khalid sent Basil Cave one last, defiant message around 8:30 a.m.
Removing our flag is not something we intend to do.
Wir sind kind. We didn't think you would shoot us. That is quite impossible.
We don't want to start shooting. But if you don't follow instructions, we will definitely do so.
9 a.m.
The due date.
The Sultan's flag was still in the air.
Quiet! Quiet.
9:02 a.m. All engines full steam ahead.
Rear-Admiral Rawson issued the following order at 9:02 a.m. Commence bombardment.
The HMS Raccoon fired the opening volley.
The impact was immediate and disastrous.
The palace's timber construction was ripped up by high explosive munitions.
Before they could even be fired successfully, the Sultan's bronze cannons were blown from their mountings. Despite having weapons, the royal guards were helpless against industrial steel.
The barrage was joined by the HMS Philomel and Thrush. The expansive wood and soft coral stone palace complex started to fall apart.
One British officer subsequently described it as a dreadful and appalling sight.
The British flagship, the St. George, was fired upon by the lone Zanzibari cruiser, HHS Glasgow, in the port.
The massive 9.2-inch guns of the 9,000-ton monster, the St. George, retaliated.
They hold the Glasgow.
It overturned and sank, leaving only its mast above the sea. The palace was a burning conflagration when they returned to land.
A shell split the Sultan's flagpole in two.
The defenses were down!
The army of the Sultan was crushing. Then Sultan Khalid took the sole action within his power.
He took off running! He took off running.
A Middle Eastern man named Khalid, in his 40s, and immediately rushed to the German consulate to apply for political asylum.
The bombing ceased at 9:40 a.m.
The flag of the Sultan was down. The palace was in ruins and was smoldering.
The conflict was finished.
Section 3. The conclusion. The repercussions were horribly biased.
A spent rifle round on the British side slightly wounded a petty officer on the HMS Thrush in the chest.
He became better. One man, minor injuries, total British casualties. The estimates on the Zanzibari side are appalling.
The 38-minute bombardment killed or injured more than 500 of Sultan Khalid's palace attendants and defenders.
The palace has disappeared. The Glasgow's wreckage closed the harbour. The military operation conducted by the British had been a terrible success. And what about the man who initiated it all, Khalid?
Inside the German consulate, he was safe.
Armed guards were stationed outside, and the British demanded that the Germans turn him over for piracy.
Since its inception, this eagle has watched over German interests abroad. It is, however, the tale doesn't stop there.
History frequently finds a final, bitter irony at its darkest moments.
The newly constituted British government in Zanzibar received a bill from the British government.
The ammo bill was for the measure.
In order to take the throne, Hamoud, the new Sultan, had to reimburse the British Empire for the expenses of the shells and bullets.
In the era of imperialism, the Anglo-Zanzibar War is a horrific footnote.
And in just 38 minutes, a whole battle may be waged, won and lost in that chasm.